Slovaks, Croatians, and Roma. So essentially, what the Dayton Peace Accords gave us, the Dayton Accords, was in like legitimized segregation. It wasn't quite like it wasn't forced upon them. The areas were set up, and then there was a gradual migration of Serbians to Republika Srpska, and everyone else to where the Serbians weren't. And so from then on, it's just that's just how it's been. There really haven't been many moves like in the name of reconciliation. What's aided? Okay, so the war has ended. The Dayton Peace Accords have passed. They've created a new democratic Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they've separated the populations. They essentially the Dayton Peace Accords did take a long-term perspective while like creating themselves. However, the long-term perspective was more aimed at democratic development and less aimed at reconciliation and peace building among like the ethnically divided population. So that essentially, I mean, it ended war, but it hasn't really worked towards reconciliation at all. In a way, it might even be an impediment to reconciliation. So then also, we're going to drop the Dayton Peace Accords. We're going to go, give me a second. Dayton Peace Accords. Okay, so we're going to drop the Dayton Peace Accords. And then, like we've talked about it. We should move on to talking about the Hague Tribunal. I think that's how you pronounce it. I really apologize if it's the Hague. However, I don't think it's the Hague. So the Hague tribunals, they were very important for the first step of reconciliation. Here's my poorly drawn out reconciliation spectrum. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, so retributive justice, truth-seeking, restitution, oblivion. So essentially the Hague was the retributive justice / truth-seeking, because what it was used as, well, obviously it was used to charge war criminals. But also, in the sense of reconciliation, the tribunal was unintentionally focused on establishing facts of what's happened. Establishing 8,000 people died in a genocide, establishing that 96,000 people died overall in the Balkan Wars, like 96,000 Bosnians, I'm pretty sure. So the Hague is very helpful for that stage of reconciliation. However, you can always go back. But interesting studies have found that, those are really important on an individual level, but individually, like from a bottom-down perspective of reconciliation, what's important about the Hague, what's interesting, it's a dynamic that I'm mentioning. I'm not mentioning like an effect or anything. The more positive that individual Bosnians are towards the results of the Hague, the more positive they are to receiving truth. The more open they are to the media, to international tribunals and stuff like that, the more likely they are to want reconciliation and to see over the ethnic divisions. They're more likely to be like the type of people we need in a society for that society to reconcile. So that's an interesting effect. But so there was also someone, Kubrick. She wrote this interesting article about, she's exploring the religious areas of reconciliation because it's such an ethno-religious conflict and an ethno-religious divide. She explores the roles that local religious leaders can play in their sermons and how they need to adopt more open Rainbow Nation-esque vocabulary through their sermons while talking to their constituents. They essentially just need to promote an acceptance of all ethnic groups and a recognition of what's different between the ethnic groups, but also a celebration of the commonalities that everyone enjoys. But she also did this survey. She surveyed a bunch of Bosnians in around 2003, I think, or 2006. And so she essentially asked them about their preferences for reconciliation, the preferences about like the next steps they want, and essentially has like compiled a really great informative source of different things that can be tried to help Bosnian society, and this is ordered in importance. So I'm just going to read those out to you, and this is probably going to be the end of the presentation. But so Kubaric says, first off, like there needs to be like recognition among society and like political society of the importance of focusing on the reconciliation process, and like again recognizing that there are differences and commonalities between every ethno-religious faction and celebrating that. Second, she says that agreement about historical facts to like clarify the degree of injustice tolerated by all sides. So like I honestly I think the Hague, the ICTY, I think those were the establishment of historical facts. However, there may be something more needed. Also, to be fair, these surveys were taken before the Hague sentenced Mladic in 2017. So after that, in importance is participants in the war and their willingness to testify / share their stories, just to, like, it's not like restitution. It's more like truth seeking. It's telling the victims, like, this is what happened. I apologize. It's building a new national consciousness. So after that, it becomes a bit more legal. So we need constitutional reform, which ends ethnicity-based parties. So we're trying to get ethno-religious factions out of the government, because that's right now they're still withstanding. It's still a Serbian-held government. Everyone's still very like bitter about that, I'm pretty sure. Okay, after that, apologies from national political leaders, which is fine. And then local political leaders, this is more of a bottom-up approach. They need to make amends with the minority population through possibly memorial ceremonies, like yearly memorial ceremonies to honor the genocide, or just giving them special treatment and protection for just like for them to return to their locality. So essentially, I mean, it's a mix of a top-down and a bottom-down approach that's needed. And what's interesting is if we want to go for a bottom-down approach, Sebastian Dutz, I'm not sure, he suggests that, bottom down, we focus on football-based initiatives because sports has a means of affecting change while avoiding political quagmires. So essentially, what he finds, though, is for Bosnians, the professional level initiatives, like the Bosnian national team, that doesn't matter. What we need for Bosnia is a grassroots, like, international effort where local NGOs and international NGOs, like, give additional funding to local Bosnian football leagues. Because, like, it creates positive experiences and interactions between divided peoples. So, essentially, from my studies, Bosnian reconciliation it's happening, I suppose. It's in the early stages. It can always go back. There needs to be more truth found in this, and honestly, like, bottom-up approach is probably the best thing because there's a lot of ethnic tensions that have been within society for centuries and centuries, and they were just kind of suppressed by Joseph Tito in the 80s and, like, all of Yugoslavia's tenure. So we need to find, like, a reconciliation that focuses on, again, as Kubric says, focuses on, like, recognizing the fact that there are differences between the ethnicities and respecting that, but also celebrating the fact that, like, we have commonalities. So I think that kind of mirrors the Rainbow Nation, like, agenda that South Africa had during their reconciliation. And I also believe that maybe, Bosnia and Herzegovina could probably take a page out of the book of South Africa because I think there are very similar circumstances there. Yeah, thank you.